friends, welcome to another lesson of Stefan's Garage, German English. Today the German will be a little bit less because I've learned that the videos are just getting too long and therefore just the main keywords will be in German and the rest will be in English. Today we are going to do a Wilbers install on this beautiful 2015-16 I learned streetglide special in a very beautiful hot rod candy color. Wie heißt die?
Gold flake black metal.
Yeah, also a lot of gold flake and heavy metal, and it's just a beautiful color in the sun. And we will do the easy install without changing the bushings, and it will be the first streetglide install, and this is good for all Batwing fairing models. So you can use this video for your Ultra, for any streetglides to get happy. Ja, wir machen nur wenige Keywords in Deutsch diesmal. Wir bauen diese wunderschöne 2016er Streetglide Special um in Hot Rod Candy, und das Video ist auch gültig für alle anderen Batwing-Umbauten ab 2014, also für die Rushmore und die Milwaukee 8s. Und ja, viel Spaß beim Zuschauen. And before we get into details, we will have a closer look onto the beautiful color. Really great. So, like on all Wilbers installs, we need to remove the fender, the brake calipers, the front wheel in order to remove the fork legs. And this time we will not remove or loosen the fuel tank. We will just cover the fuel tank area here and this bracket, and then get access to the upper triple tree pinch bolts. To protect the fuel tank and this bracket, we will just use some masking tape.
Wie lang?
So ungefähr. So the tank is already protected, and the rest will go onto the bracket, but we are not scratching the paint on this cover.
Fertig?
No. And now it's just 2 Allen keys on this side and on the other side. Then we can loosen the whole bracket and we just leave it in place and just get it a little bit out of the way when we loosen the triple tree pinch bolts. It's a 532 Allen key, and we remove dein Tray. Ich habe nämlich mein Plastik-Tray auch dabei, aber das ist ja magnetic. Perfekt.
Aldi.
Echt Aldi ist die hier?
Ja.
Super. And now we can just remove the brackets a little bit and get enough room to get to the upper triple tree pinch bolt over here without scratching anything, and no need to disconnect the cables or remove the ignition switch. Okay, we start to get this beautiful painted fender out of the way with a 1/4 inch Allen socket from both sides to remove it. So ist jetzt. Dann gehst du auf die Seiten bei mir her. Und dann machen wir die als erstes ganz raus und dann holst du da, ich mache die drüber und dann drehen wir entlang des Rades nach vorne weg. So, das wird jetzt ein bisschen laut. Nee, weil der Fender so halt die Schraube. diese.
Hast du?
Ja, ganz hast du.
Die Schale, ne?
Ja. Slowly, careful, nach vorne raus, entlang des Rades. Genau, jetzt können wir direkt. And now everything is protected. If we drop a tool or something, then nothing sensitive is in the way. Next will be the brake calipers. Those are 10 mm 12 point.
Achse war schon immer eigentlich metrisch, oder?
Na, Achse zöllig, aber Bremsen sind Brembo, europäisch.
Ja.
Just prepare some cloth bags for the brake calipers to rest them properly. Schau die braunen Stoffsackerl.
Die Bremssättel?
Genau. Fangen wir da hoch. Weil drüben hängt ABS-Sensorkabel noch dran. Und da tust du den Bremssattel dann komplett rein. Ja. Next is the front axle, a 15/16 standard socket. And note, when I'm losing it, I still have this pinch bolt tightened, so I don't need to hold it. But when we tighten the axle later on, we have to be careful that we are not binding the fork. And the pinch bolt is metric, as the fork is from Showa in Japan, so it's a 6mm metric Allen. As we're not planning to do a fork rebuild, we just loosen the bolt, we don't need to remove it. Ja. Mit dem ABS-Sensor. And now we are ready, everything is prepared. We will loosen those 2 1/4-inch Allen and the hidden one underneath the cover, and then we can remove the first fork leg. Jetzt hat ja nichts über ein schönes Werkzeug. Wenn du vorne bleibst,
ja.
I will start loosening the 2. Which honestly one was not really tight. Okay, and now everything is protected. I can lift the cover, get access to the upper screw. Und jetzt kommt die Gabel raus. Ja, müsste ganz rausgehen. Die.
Das rausziehen?
Ja, komplett raus. Okay, gib mir so rüber. So, the bike doesn't have too many miles on it. Let's just check. 22,000 K, so that's around 16,000 miles. And the seals are completely dry. The bushings on those 49mm forks, they are pretty durable. So we won't do a fork rebuild. We will just change the oil and the fork spring. So we start with the first fork leg. Always be careful because there is definitely pressure in those fork legs. I use an old oil filter wrench just to fix the fork tube. And this is an 19mm Allen socket. Normally those things, yeah, they are not tight. Well, they are not supposed to be that loose, but lucky us. Also ja, mit der Hand mal hin. And now, as I mentioned, there is tension, but you see, it's not too much tension. Yeah, I can press it. So we use a thicker leather glove because there are sharp objects inside the fork and we might hurt ourselves. And then I just exercise pressure on the fork leg. As soon as we see the O-ring, it's getting a little bit serious. So just a little bit pressure, not too much, because then you will have the pressure that you're exercising against you. And then I hold the top of the nut with a leather glove and slowly that's it. You see, it's not too much pressure, but if you miss exactly the moment when the thread is loose, then you're going to hurt yourself with those very sharp preload sleeves, and that's basically the biggest risk or danger. Those will be reused as well as the shim, but not the fork spring. Definitely not the oil. Oops. Yeah, it's my book shop. Okay. A little bit fun in Stefan's garage. 2 old guys showering in oil. Maybe 2 younger girls showering in something else would be more interesting. And then we just leave it upside down, let the oil drain for quite a while. Just check the bushings in between, but they look pretty, yeah, absolutely no play, so we are good in keeping the old ones. So we let the oil drain. We didn't put spray cleaner inside the fork tube because we won't get it out. And a little bit of old Harley oil mixed with the new Wilbers oil is not bad, but a little bit of brake cleaner mixed with any other oil is not good. So therefore, let it drain for a couple of minutes, then press it fully down. And fill in a good amount of the new oil. Now we need to get all the air out of the fork tube. Wie müsstest du jetzt hier unten halten, weil ich die nach oben wegziehe? Bei dem jetzt? Na, beim Taucher. Ja. Genau. Okay, then I cover the top without the glove, creating a vacuum. And the same on the way down. And so we easily get all the air out of the small channels down in the fork. We do this about 20 times, but you will hear that the noise of the liquid in here will change, and then you know that you are finished. Jetzt haben wir kein Noise mehr. So, and then for the final setting, again fully down, we lost quite an amount of oil. Our metering gauge is already set to 110 millimeters. That's the once again, I'm doing too many of those 110 millimeter forks. It's exactly 110, but we want to be sure. So we need a little bit extra in order to hear the oil. Was holst du oben drauf? Genau. So, as I mentioned, this was already calibrated to 110 before. Now we just suck out the excessive oil. Which takes a while due to the viscosity. And now we have exactly 110. Okay. And now we have cleaned the preload sleeve, we have cleaned the washer. We didn't have to clean the fork as it was in a plastic bag, but note, I can't emphasize it often enough, that was the direction how the Harley spring was mounted, and the Wilbers spring will be just mounted the opposite way with the progressive end to the top. And there's a slight difference in length, which is covered by the higher quality steel. So the preload when we are finished is about the same. So fully down, then compressive end of the fork showing upward. The washer. And now we will just do the first of our tricks. As this is a fine thread, it's quite difficult to find exactly the position where the thread is starting. So we make a mark here. Then we put in the sleeve, and then hopefully we should be able to close it pretty soon. So, das müsste jetzt sogar von Hand gehen. And as I mentioned, the preload should be the same like with the and done. This is not edited, and it took me, without those markings, sometimes up to 10 times in order to get it to work. Still be careful, we don't have many threads, now everything is fine. And take your time, everything needs to be nice and easy, that you're not damaging those threads. It was way too loose when we removed it, so we will torque it down to the proper spec, which is, fasten your seatbelt, 30 up to 80 Newton meters. So it's quite a lot and quite a big spread. Like always in aviation, double check. 45.
Papa, dein Handy.
Hier sind wir drüber, aber innerhalb 30 bis 80.
Ja.
So, and then we will remove our ink markings. Now we put it in approximately to the same height as before. No need to do a proper alignment yet. We will do that when we have the other one. Okay, Höhe. Stopp. So.
Passt, oder?
Okay, the proper alignment will be done when we insert the second one. And we don't want to bore you, so we will just pause the video, do the second fork leg, and then we will be back for the final adjustment. So the second fork leg is finished. The first one is already torqued down with 22 Newton meters on the triple trees. And now we're going to insert the other fork leg and align them properly that we have the best suspension performance. Okay, let's rein tun. And for that we use a little bit of a trick with the axle. Normally you would measure the top in the triple tree to be exact the same value on both sides regarding the depth of the fork legs. But the triple trees are not 100% straight machined, and it's hard to get a correct measurement. Therefore, we will use the front axle and just make sure that we have the axle absolutely free moving without any resistance. And you see we have about 1 or 2 millimeters up and down. We try to just find the middle and then find the spot where we have no resistance with the axle. Takes maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Du hast das drüber noch?
Ja, klar. Höher.
So, jetzt haben wir genau. So, jetzt heute mal so.
Ja.
That looked perfect. Let me just
Ja, so, ja.
a little bit tighten. Okay, kann schon nicht mehr rausfallen.
Dann geh weg, gell?
Ja. Mit der Achse kann sowieso nicht rausfallen. So, the first 2 pin screws are just slightly tightened, and then now we will check if we still have no binding. Yeah, you see everything is moving completely free, and then just double check the top that, I don't know how it's called in English, that the amount that the fork tubes are showing out of the triple tree are approximately the same, but the more precise way is really to have the axle move freely, so both fork legs are exactly mounted in the precise way. And now we torque the other side down, 22 Newton meters, and you know it from the other installs, as 20 ist geschaut. As the lower triple tree has 2 pinch screws, we need to tighten them a couple of times, because every time one is set, it will loosen the other one. So make this about 3 or 4 times. See what I mean? All those screws have been just correct, and now need to be a little bit of refinement. Now we're fine. And we have the single top one. Perfect. Front is completed. Auf. Okay, we start with the front wheel. Make sure that you haven't changed the direction, then your ABS might not work anymore. Okay, and no resistance. Then we put on the washer and the nut, and make sure if you initially tighten the nut that you press the ABS sensor a little bit upwards. So, because it might slide down when you tighten the axle. So just for the initial torque, keep it up there. And then the important thing is this pinch ball needs to be loose. So you need to hold the axle with a screwdriver, flathead, and torque down the axle. Recommended torque, just use the medium value, is 98 for the front axle.
Hello.
After the initial torque, the ABS sensor will stay in place, and then you can just get it to the final torque. And now it's time to torque down the pinch screw. And I'm using 27, 24.5 up to 30 is the factory spec. So we go just in the middle, which is 27. Beep. 27. No, just kidding. For those who haven't fall asleep in the meantime. And then the brake calipers, 45 Newton meters is the medium torque value, and no Loctite. Don't use power tools from the beginning, just when the threads are already engaged. Gewinde gehen, okay? Double checked by the owner, as always in aviation, two-man job. And wrenching on a Harley is just like flying a plane. And now, important step, as we might have spread the brake pads a little bit, we need to activate the front brake a couple of times to be sure that it's working for the test ride. So next step is the front fender. Here the mean torque value is 25 Newton meters, and here Harley recommends the use of blue Loctite. Also auf der Malte schon hier drauf.
Sicher.
Ja. Lukte dann auf Kamera. Okay.
So ein bisschen Eischlang.
Ja. Genau, super. Gut. Ja, perfekt. once again, we have an example that size does matter. So everything is finished in the front, just the cover needs to be reinstalled, and we need to remove the masking tape, and then the front is done. And now we focus on the rear. So the rear wheel is just barely lifted. No, it's okay. And now we remove the toy suspension provided from Harley.
Warm wieder?
Nachher. And as always, we do a comparison. Those are the left-hand shocks. Note the Wilbers shocks have always the standard 13-inch length, whereas the streetglidespecial shocks are the low ones. So out of this we already get a little bit of more comfort, but mostly out of the technology. And here it is always getting comical. As Robert Simmons says, this is a toy, this should be on a bicycle, and this is the real stuff. So first we need to lift the bike a little bit. We will just install the lower mount and then lift it, that we're not damaging the threads when inserting the other screw. Blue Loctite needs to be applied, and the torque is 90 Newton meters. Ich habe jetzt noch einen Tipp, die Kamera läuft mit, die mache ich runter. Die Bolzen sind identisch zu den Milwaukee 8. Die Milwaukee 8 kriegen zwischen 85 und 95 Newtonmeter, ohne den Sprengring. Beide mit Blue Loctite. Die haben einen Sprengring, kriegen 50 Newtonmeter, aber dann fehlt uns halt 2 mm Übergang. Die Schwinge ist identisch, das ist identisch, also von dem her, ich mache es immer so, dass ich die runter mache und dann auf die 90 anziehe.
Ich springe brauchst du mal nicht weiter, wenn du das drauf tust.
Genau. Make sure that the threads are working. And now you see the difference. We need to lift the bike. And once again, make sure that the thread is working before you use force or the special tool. Yeah, it is working. And the Wilbers sticker showing to the rear, it's not very important on this side, but it's there's a small gap. Let me just get the camera closer. I will show it with my rubber glove. You see my fingers down here? There's a small groove in the lower spring mount, and mounting it in this direction ensures that all the water from washing or from the rain can just drain, and there's no water trapped inside causing corrosion. Actually, let us just mount the other side and then we will torque it down. I always start with the conventional right-hand shock, because now you see we have a little bit of a gap. Wir müssen ablassen, ganz leicht, siehst du, Schere, so einen halben Millimeter ungefähr.
Ich habe ein Siegel, 1 Millimeter.
Ja. Dafür nehme ich immer den anderen Scherenheber. Sonst heben wir nochmal auf, wenn es wäre.
Und?
Nein, noch nicht. Ist noch nicht gegangen. Jetzt, ja.
Passt? Oder
Passt. And once again, we check that everything is working. So start with the right-hand shock first, and then you can lower it a little bit in order if there's just a small difference in length between the shock and the Nivomat. Note that we have removed the lock washers. Those bolts are identical to the newer Milwaukee 8 models. I checked the part number, and the newer Milwaukee 8, they don't have the lock washer and get between 85 and 95 Newton meters. So we take exactly 90 without the lock washer, so we have more thread to hold the shock and the blue Loctite. And then the other side. In the meantime, I will already check the belt tension. As we have now the longer shocks, belt tension is still looking good. And last but not least, as the rear is taller because of the longer shocks, we need to readjust the headlight setting, and then we are done. And with all the nice talking, we almost forgot the most important thing, to do the initial adjustment. For that, we need a measuring tape or a ruler, and then we have to make sure that the rear is lifted. Nochmal einen.
Musst du auf oder ab?
Auf it. Okay. So make sure that the rear wheel is free moving, and then we take the base measurement between the two shock mounting bolts, and with my kind of ruler it is just here at 18 centimeters, just because of the ruler that, or the measuring device I'm using, and I'm marking this 18, and then with the bike on the ground and Gary sitting on the bike, this needs to have a rider sag of 20 millimeters, and if not, we need to readjust the preload on that spring, and then the Nivomat is good to go, and everything else regarding passenger or luggage will be adjusted automatically. And now the designated rider needs to sit on the bike, preferably in riding gear. And now we check the sag, and we have almost 30 millimeters, so we need to increase the preload. Therefore we need to loosen the top ring, and then we increase the preload. Even though you provided your weight when ordering the kit, this is a part that definitely needs to be done to have the optimum performance.
Lass mich reinfallen.
Na, einfach nur aufsitzen, nicht fallen. Getting closer, but still not where we want to be. So, dann nochmal. Now we have exactly 20 millimeters. Nimmst du mal deinen linken Fuß aufs Trittbrett? Yeah, doesn't change a lot. So factory spec is plus minus 5 mil. I would honestly, as we don't have the right hand saddlebag and Gary is not wearing riding gear, I would go a little bit to more preload, maybe just one turn and then we are good. Gut, dann kannst du wieder runter.
Du nicht runter?
Ja, warte mal geschwind. Wir machen noch mal ein kleines bisschen mehr, weil du hast jetzt ja kein Quando und den Koffer haben wir nicht da. Okay, that should do it. Dann kannst du komplett runter. Now we are ready to go for the test ride. I said a quarter-inch and not smaller. Das ist jetzt schön über den Kopf, da werden es alle schwindelig werden.
Ja, genau.